This podcast features mortgage banker Cindy Vandiver, NMLS 164102. That's Stockton Mortgage, NMLS 8259, Equal Housing Lender. Views and opinions expressed are those of Ms. Vandiver and do not necessarily reflect those of Stockton Mortgage. Ms. Vandiver's information should not be considered to be legal or tax advice.
They say hindsight is 20/20, and boy, can we ever say that for this year. I know that this past year was certainly challenging for me as a mother. I found myself in a position where I was having to work at home with a toddler, a 4-year-old, and learn how to adjust in many, many ways. So I think that we've all found ourselves in that position, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm April Rooks with RE/MAX Center. This is the From the Heart and Soul Real Estate Show, and I have my lovely co-host with me today, Cindy Vandiver with Stockton Mortgage.
Hi, April.
Hey there.
It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here with me today. We're going to have a great show. Being in the real estate industry, I know that we see a lot of wild things, and 2020 was certainly full of some wild adventures for each and every one of us. Yes. And, I heard a funny story about a real estate agent that was working in California, and he was running a little late to meet his clients, and the clients were deciding to, let's just ride around the complex to check things out. And, look at the amenities of the property. And as they were making another circle around the townhomes, all of a sudden this car rushes by and hits them on the corner of their vehicle.
Oh no.
And so everyone of course gets out of their vehicles and stops. And the buyers looked at the person getting out of their car and said, "Don't tell me you're the Milburns." And of course, it was the Milburns, the sellers of the property, the townhome that they were going to look at.
My.
So they spend the next 2 hours going through insurance and paperwork and all of that. But finally, the buyer then said, "Well, I guess now let's continue with the tour." So wildly enough, they continued with their tour and made a deal. So crazy, things happen out there in the real estate world. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is that we have certainly found ourselves having to learn to pivot. I was having a conversation with someone, and we were just kind of in the same synergy of the fact that 2020 was a year of us having to learn to pivot. I grew up as a 90s child, and so, of course, everybody loved the show Friends. Did you ever watch Friends?
I did. I love that show. I still watch it today.
Do you? Yeah,
yes.
I do too. Thank goodness for reruns on Netflix, right?
Absolutely.
And so there was an episode with Ross, and he is moving apartments in his complex. So Ross has Joey and Chandler to help him move, right? So they have to move this sofa up the stairs to the upstairs apartment. And of course, we know the stairwells in apartments are narrow and not necessarily very friendly for moving large furniture. And so anyway, in all of their frustration and trying to figure out how to turn this sofa and get it up these stairs, Ross
suddenly
starts to go, "Pivot! And
that's exactly what we did this year,
yes,
right?
That's how it felt. Pivot! We have to make this work. We have to figure out a way to turn this and to make it happen. And so I know that you felt that way too. And so Cindy, tell us a little bit about what you do in Stockton Mortgage, and also how this year you found yourself, and I guess over 20 years of working in the mortgage business, of how you've found yourself having to pivot this year.
Yes, most definitely. When March came around and everybody was shutting down, and the mortgage industry was really turned up on its head, to be honest. I mean, lenders were backing away from the market. Some of the alternative financing programs went away completely. Lenders started charging discount points for good credit borrowers too. And it was just chaotic. The lenders and the servicers didn't know what they were going to do with the forbearance issue. So all of these things really just kind of brought the mortgage industry into an oh my God, what do we do now? Because so many people were refinancing, so many people were buying, and the sheer volume of loan applications coming in was overwhelming to the lenders, to their whole back office. So, and then to top it off with that everybody had to go home to work. And so that was a tremendous pivot point for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that from the realtor's perspective, of course, we found ourselves in a seller's market. The inventory of housing was extremely low. So then it's really great for sellers, but buyers were at times struggling to try to find a property. Mm-hmm. And then the positive thing, though, for buyers was our interest rates.
Yes. They're at an all-time low. I've never seen interest rates so low.
Yeah, so it's been a great time for buyers and for those who want to.
And for refinancing.
Yeah, to refinance.
Mm-hmm. Home improvement.
Yeah. So it definitely highlights to the year and to some of the craziness. And then we also saw some interesting marketing trends with the land becoming a commodity because the housing inventory is low. So more people are purchasing land and considering building for their future plans. Mm-hmm. So many changes that we've had to address. And one of the really awesome things about planning for this show is that this show has actually been in the works for many, many months, but due to some of these pivots and these changes, and certain people also getting COVID, we've had to delay things and we've had to adjust and we've had to pivot. But I'm so excited about the show because I have a heart for education, and I have a heart for people that want to know more. And that's one of the driving factors of this show, is to be a resource to our community in North Georgia and helping people to understand the real estate market, helping to understand mortgages and lending and what that looks like for them and for their families and planning. Mm-hmm. And giving people an opportunity to come to a show where we have fun while we're giving you that education. And so today we're also in a little bit going to have what we're going to call the From the Heart moment. And these are good stories of awesome things happening in our community, of people doing good things and making a difference, whether that's a nonprofit, businesses, individuals. And so I'm very excited that we have that intention behind the show. I was in real estate many years ago. I got out of the business, and then I worked the last, many years before I got back in the business a year ago into real estate. I'd worked as a marketing professional in the senior care industry. And so that's one of the things that I find is a focus for me, is I love working with seniors and with their families and helping them with those senior transitions when maybe mom or dad or a loved one are looking for a senior living community or needing to go into skilled care facilities, and they need to sell their home and they need to figure out all of the pieces of what that looks like to help that go as smoothly as possible for the family and for their loved one, because it's not an easy time at all.
No, it's not.
And so that's very important to me, and sharing some pieces of that on the show. And then Cindy's just a wonderful, wonderful part of going to be a wonderful part of the show as well, because Cindy brings so much experience to the table. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that experience and why this show is so relevant and for you at this time in your career.
Well, I have always wanted to do something like this, April. And when you came to me and talked to me about this, it just felt awesome. It just felt so good, because I do a lot of education, and it's usually one-on-one across the desk. And I've always wanted to get out to more people so people really understand what their options are when it comes to mortgage financing. And the lowest rate isn't always maybe the best thing. And you've got to take, your mortgage, you're buying your house, that's probably the single biggest investment that you will ever make. And you may only do that 3 or 4 times in your lifetime. So whatever you choose is important, and you want to make sure that it fits into your financial planning. Not just the lowest rate, not just your standard, 30-year fixed mortgage, although that's what we pretty much do because the rates are so low right now. The options are a little bit more limited, but it's helping people with deciding how to improve their credit score. It's helping them to understand how their payments can affect their long-term debt situation. So all that is just, I'm so excited that you brought me into this. Thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. Cindy and I have known each other for a while through a beautiful friend of mine, and she's kind of brought us together since I've got back into the real estate industry, and it's been a wonderful partnership and friendship. And so we're looking forward to a wonderful, wonderful show for many, many years together. And so what I want to talk about next is the way that COVID has kind of shifted things and our talk about pivoting. Certainly this year, as you kind of touched on a minute ago, COVID has changed the financing. It's also changed the credit scores and some of the loan eligibility. Talk a little bit about that.
So with the credit scores pre-COVID, we could usually get people financed that had the lower credit scores, the 580s or below in some cases. Now, the credit scores have been elevated up to really you need to be at a 640. It's better if you're at a 700 because if you have a higher credit score, you're going to have a lower interest rate. You're going to have a lower payment. Your homeowner's insurance is going to be lower. So previously, there wasn't that big of a disparity between, there was some, but it wasn't as large as what it is now. So I do a lot of credit counseling, a lot. Can I tell you a sweet moment that happened yesterday?
Please,
okay.
Yes.
So I was working with this couple for like 4 years, and they did everything that I told them to do, everything. And then life happens, and they get off track, right? Well, yesterday, after 4 years of working with them, they bought their house.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's an incredible moment.
So excited. So excited. So I'm just so glad that they could get into a house the first of the year and start fresh.
Doesn't it just feel wonderful?
It does. It warms your heart. There you go.
Yes, that's what it's about.
It is. That's what it's about. So getting back to the credit scores, and it's very important. And here's a little couple tricks that I tell people, is that you need to have revolving credit. I know people hate to hear that, but you have to have credit cards on your credit report. Mm-hmm. Now, the credit bureaus really like to see a couple of different credit cards, 2, 3, 4 credit cards, but they want to see like no balances on the majority of them, and they want to see a balance of about 10% of your available limit on your credit. And here's a trick. If you charge on your credit card all through the month, and then you pay it off, right? If you pay it off or pay it down 7 to 10 days prior to the due date, then the credit bureaus will get that lower balance instead of paying it after. So that's a little trick to try to get your credit score up. I'm seeing right now a lot of the credit scoring models where scores are coming in just below that threshold to get a better rate. So credit is really important in this day and time.
Sure. And I understand as well that in this past year, of course, it is, a little more challenging to be self-employed and to qualify for a loan. And then due to COVID, there was some more restrictions with certain lenders, and that, there were other requirements for self-employed people. Do you see that those things are going to continue this year? They're
going to continue. There's no doubt about it. We have some additional things that we do right before closing to make sure people are still employed and to make sure that they're still conducting business. So I closed on a realtor friend of mine on their house this week, or actually it was last week. And we had to show that they were still conducting business. And, realtors can go several weeks between closings.
Right.
So they were wanting us to show a closing within the last 20 days to prove that they were still doing business. So anytime you're self-employed, we do have some last-minute things, whether it's an invoice, a deposit, an expense, or something, we've got to show that's business-related.
Sure.
And there's a lot of additional documentation that we're going through because so many people have been hit financially because of COVID.
Right. And now what about VHA and VA loans? Have you seen some changes within the requirements for those as well?
On VA, FHA, USDA, those government loans, it's the same thing. We still have to go through some additional documentation. Now, the good thing about it right now is that Stockton Mortgage is not penalizing people for being off of work for COVID. We just have to document it. And we have to document it a lot. We have to document how much they got from unemployment, what dates, from what date to what date they were, not working. And so we try to give them every benefit of the doubt of the income that we can use for qualifying, which determines how much they can buy.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Cindy and I came up with a list because 2020 has certainly, as we've been talking about today, been the year of pivot. We're now, of course, in January of 2021, and we were talking about some phrases that we hope to never hear again. Now, I don't know if this is going to actually be true for 2021, but in an ideal world, we would love to never hear these 5 phrases again. And this is going to be in the heart and spirit of David Letterman. I know that I used to always look forward to his top 10 list.
Right.
So here's a few little fun things that we hope we never hear again. Our number 5 is the new normal.
Yes.
I don't know what that means exactly.
I'm not sure either.
But maybe
I don't think anything of this is normal.
Exactly. Yeah, or a new normal or whatever that means. Our number 4 is I am in quarantine.
Yes, been there, done that.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Right. So, we hope we don't have to say that anymore this year. Number 3 is essential worker. Now, this one I found really interesting because I'm not sure that anyone that's employed felt like they were not essential.
Non-essential, exactly. I think every single person is essential.
Yes. And so, that's definitely got to go. Number 2 is social distancing. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going anywhere.
No, it's really bad when you see somebody and you want to go up and give them a hug and you're like, air hug.
Yes.
And to see if they're going to hug or not hug or how people respond.
Oh, yes.
It
was really funny. Speaking to that, I went into a closing a week or two ago, and this was an attorney that I had not, met before, worked with before.
Right.
We both put our hands out, and then we both kind of retracted, like, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Do we or do we not?
And then we both finally said, we'll just shake hands. We have hand sanitizer here on the table. It's nice to meet you, So such awkward moments that you would just never dream of.
I know.
And our number 1, drum roll, is these are unprecedented times.
On so many levels. In so many facets.
How many times did we turn on the news or the radio and we're in unprecedented times?
I know.
Yes, we could see that go, couldn't we?
Yes, absolutely.
So if you know me, I'm a kind of from the heart person. Sometimes people pick words. I don't know if you've ever experienced this or done this within different groups, but they will say, pick a word that kind of describes your life or what you would represent. And for me, that word is love. Mm-hmm. And that's a very fundamental place that I come from. And so when I came up with this line, I came up with in the line and then which became the show, From the Heart and Sold, was because it's from the heart, and I don't want working with people to just be a transaction based business,
right?
And we all have to make a living. and we're all working hard to do that. But ultimately, it comes from a place of wanting to serve people,
exactly,
right? Yeah, and help others. Mm-hmm. And so, while I bring expertise and all of this knowledge and things to the table, it's just not a transaction based thing for me. It's definitely from the heart. So now we're going to talk about this from the heart moment, and this really comes from a place of community and from people doing good things. And Connie Rock has a store on the Gainesville Square called Purchase Effect. Not sure if you've ever visited
I have not.
that store. Great store. She helps to support artisans from around the world and buying their pieces and selling these, and they are able to actually help with sex trafficking, planting trees. They've just a number of different things that they help with through the purchases that are made at this store. But Connie and I were talking, and I wanted to highlight this because it was so meaningful and definitely from the heart. They partnered with Downtown Drafts right on the square to do good in the community, and the idea was to just help one. And you might have heard the Mother Teresa quote that says, "If you can't feed 100, feed one. Feed one."
Right.
And so that was the idea, was to help just one. And if it was one person that you could impact and make a difference in their life, then that's worth it. And so they partnered with Downtown Drafts, and they started having these events where every purchase that was made during this event or that day, or donations, would go towards different organizations within the community. So as they started doing this, it went so well. Their events have been successful. So they've been able to give back to places like CASA here locally, as well as as an animal rescue, among Rahab's Rope. That's another store on the square, and they support organizations helping to prevent or rescue women from sex trafficking in India and different places in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So what a wonderful, wonderful story to kick this year off.
Absolutely.
That we have wonderful people that are helping to make a difference and an impact in our community in that way. So thank you.
That's fabulous.
Yes, thank you for making a difference and for doing that. I want to encourage you to follow me on Instagram and Facebook so that you can get real estate updates and information and learn more and see more about our upcoming shows. And we want to hear from you. If you have some good stories that you'd like to share that we can tell in our From the Heart moment, please share those with us and help us to continue to spread love in the world, because we need that.
We definitely need that.
Yeah. So we want to hear from you. You can send those stories to aprilrooksrealty@gmail.com, or you can give me a call and share the story with me personally at 678-851-4992. Also, please join us for our next From the Heart and Soul show. We are going to have a wonderful conversation about how you can qualify for and purchase a home with no down payment. Yes, you heard me correct.
Yes.
0 down payment. Can you believe that? It's for real.
I love that program.
So join us on our next show so that you can learn more about that.
This podcast features mortgage banker Cindy Vandiver, NMLS 164102. At Stockton Mortgage, NMLS 8259, Equal Housing Lender. Views and opinions expressed are those of Ms. Vandiver and do not necessarily reflect those of Stockton Mortgage. Ms. Vandiver's information should not be considered to be legal or tax advice.